Welcome back to the Center Square Daily. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. Now let's put Illinois in focus, where one Chicago police officer is dead and another critically injured after a man allegedly gained access to a gun and shot them at Swedish Hospital on Saturday. CWB Chicago reports an individual in custody, 26-year-old Alfonso Talley, had two violent felony cases pending against him, had escaped from electronic monitoring, and was listed as an absconder by the Illinois Department of Corrections. Officer John Bartholomew, 38, was killed, and a 57-year-old officer was hospitalized in critical condition. Talley had several felony convictions, according to CWB. Joining us to react to this story is Republican State Representative Patrick Sheenan, who is also a law enforcement officer. Representative, thanks for taking time. I can imagine hearing another story out of Chicago with violence against law enforcement hits close to the community for police officers. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I really appreciate it. As a member of our Big Blue family here in Illinois, we mourn a hero in Officer Jonathan Bartholomew. And my thoughts and prayers go out to Officer Bartholomew's family. And my prayers go out to the CPD and the CPD officer who's clinging on to dear life at the hospital. The breaking point is here, Greg. We have a Chicago police officer dead. The brutal consequences of the Safety Act have reared its ugly head with the murder of a Chicago police officer. Democrat politicians have championed this legislation, and time and time again, it has failed. The time is now to repeal the Safety Act.
Talk a bit about some of the provisions in the Safety Act. Again, this is a measure that passed with Democrats advancing it during the COVID pandemic. It included the Pretrial Fairness Act, which essentially ended cash bail across the state of Illinois being the first state to do so. What specifically do you think is leading to not just this story from over the weekend, but months ago, the woman being lit on fire on public transportation by an individual who had a long rap sheet and, felony, still let out of jail to the streets? What specifically do legislators need to focus on to correct those faults?
Well, you've hit it right on the head. We're seeing it time and time again where our criminal justice system is a revolving door, and violent offenders are let out to reoffend and to put more victims in their wake. I think accountability is completely lacking when it comes to the Safety Act. We have judges that are handcuffed, and then we have other judges who are litigating with ideology. So I really urge my Democrat politicians to bring Republicans like myself to the table, and we need to take a serious look. We're back in Springfield. The House is back next week. We need to repeal this act, and we need to get back to the drawing board.
What have those conversations been like with some of your Democratic colleagues? Because when we ask them around the State House, they'll say, yeah, there's some changes that we can make. But, I mean, here we are. We've got 4 weeks left of legislative activity, and we really haven't seen any hearings on this. Are they just providing lip service to those who raise these types of loopholes? Or is there a genuine effort, in your opinion, to actually address these things by the Democratic majority?
I would have to agree with you when it comes to lip service. I know that I've reached across the aisle since I've been there. This is my third year. I have nearly 20 years in law enforcement. We have a former prosecutor, 2 other law enforcement officers in our caucus. We have firsthand knowledge of how this criminal justice system works and how the Safety Act is impacting us on a daily basis. And there have been slight conversations. We still don't have a Republican in the Public Safety Working Group on the Democrat side. We've created our own Truth in Public Safety Working Group here with the House Republicans, and we've offered legislation to our Democrat colleagues. I believe that they've taken a lot of it under advisement, but whether they're going to act on it, I don't know. but I would say now is as good a time as any. When something like this happens to a fellow member of law enforcement, there's a certain type of anger, but there needs to be something positive that comes out of this. And we have about a month to go in our legislative session, and I really hope that we can do something positive for our residents here in Illinois.
I mean, this is hit close to home in your district as well, Representative.
Mhm.
Tell us about the Boss family.
So, well, Jennifer, we know the Boss family. I keep in contact with her. The Balin family is the one that's particularly affected in my district. A 4-year-old little girl is dead. Her parents accuse her of murder. She was left unattended from some of the sources that I've heard, and she got a hold of some sort of drugs on a table that were possibly laced with fentanyl. And now they're sitting at home getting credit for time served day for day, and they're still awaiting trial for murder.
It's pretty remarkable, but obviously something that we'll have to keep watching to see if legislators at the Illinois State House take up any reforms that there may be for the Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act. But other big things people are watching, Representative, is the mega projects. And that is something you guys passed before you wrapped up session last week. It seemed to have bipartisan support and bipartisan opposition. What are your thoughts about this bill that gives certain types of large investment projects carve outs that the regular mom and pops aren't going to be able to take advantage of?
Well, I think this is a good start. I trust that our colleagues in the Senate are going to put in the proper guardrails that protect our residents. And, when it comes back to the House, I'm going to take a second look at it. I mean, we want jobs, we want economic development, we want tax revenue. I don't know why Chicago should be the only destination in the state while the rest of the state is full of well-paved expressways that lead to universities and prisons.
So when it comes to the Chicago Bears, do you think whatever they do to tweak the House bill in the Senate is going to be enough to appease the Bears to stay in the land of Lincoln?
Well, I think there's rhetoric that you've heard from both sides, whether the Bears are going to actually, pull tail and run to Indiana. I think Illinois and the opportunities that we have here in Illinois are far superior to what Indiana has to offer. Like I said, this is a fantastic start. This isn't just about the Bears. This is about bringing economic growth to the rest of the state.
How do you answer to those critics, though, who say this is going to make that small mom and pop shop outside of a mega projects district negatively impacting them because they're not going to be able to take advantage of similar types of tax breaks there may be?
Well, without going too deep into the weeds on, whether you're inside the mega project district or outside the mega project district, I ran a poll in my district, which has a lot of space for development. We're in the southwest suburbs, and overwhelmingly, almost 63% approved of tax incentives for these type of projects. And this is why I said this is a good start from the beginning. This is the vehicle that we put into the Senate. Hopefully, the Senate can put in the proper guardrails. I think there's a little misnomer on both sides when it comes to whether this is going to extremely raise property taxes. I tend to disagree with that, but like I said, I have full confidence that our colleagues in the Senate are going to get this right, and we'll have a second crack at it in the House.
And we'll also be watching closely, Representative, what happens with the budget, right? I mean, May 31st is just around the corner. But we're going to have to save that for another day because there's going to be plenty of activity on a whole host of
it's going to be it's going to be a full sprint to the finish. And if you don't mind, Greg, if I can just put a typo on what we had talked about earlier about Officer Bartholomew. The rhetoric that has come out of the other side of the aisle, especially Democratic leadership from Mayor Brandon Johnson and Governor Pritzker, where Mayor Brandon Johnson has called law enforcement a sickness that needs to be eradicated. We have Governor Pritzker calling law enforcement the Gestapo. Jackbooted thugs, has called for the abolishment of ICE. I mean, all this talk, all this rhetoric sounds a lot like defund the police, and we saw how well that worked out for the Democrats. So I really hope they're serious after a tragedy like Officer Bartholomew, that we get back to the drawing board and actually do what's right for the citizens here in our state.
Republican State Representative Patrick Sheenan, greatly appreciate you taking the time with us here today for the Center Square Daily.